Subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon so that you never miss any video lesson from Rao's IAS Study Circle. Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified, an answer to what, why and how of newspaper reading from your UPSC perspective. Today, let us discuss the important news which has appeared in the New Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper dated 2nd August 2020. The news to be discussed has been displayed on your screen and timestamping for the same has been provided in your description box below. So on this note, let's start our today's discussion from our examination perspective. The first news to be discussed appears on page number 1. It says ICMR, that is Indian Council of Medical Research, fast tracks approvals for Israeli research coordinated by DRDO. Defense wing can decide on study processes which includes transfer of data, saliva samples from 5,000 patients from 4 government hospitals in Delhi. So this particular news highlights that the government of India intends to have a collaboration with the government of Israel, especially with respect to conduct as well as research on patients who have been admitted in Delhi government hospitals for COVID-19. So, the Government of India, through DRDO, that is Defense Research and Development Organization, in collaboration with Israel's Directorate of Defense Research and Development, that is DDRD, intends to conduct trials on Indian patients who are suffering from COVID-19 on audio test, breath test, thermal test, as well as polyamino test. Further, these trials, which will be done in collaboration with Israel, will be controlled by Defense Research and Development Organization. However, this news highlights that for this particular purpose, that is for controlling these trials by DRDO needs to take approval from Health Ministry's screening committee because there is a case of a foreign collaboration. So, in this regard, the Health Ministry's screening committee has provided a expedited approval with respect to this collaborated research project which will be conducted on Indian patients with respect to audio test, breath test, thermal test as well as polyamino test. Now so far the screening committee of health ministry has given an expedited approval. However, an overall approval is yet to be given by the health ministry. Now here is another counter view which has been provided by principal scientific advisor. According to the principal scientific advisor, he says that DRDO need not take approval from Health Ministry's screening committee as the trials can be conducted as per the guidelines issued by Vaccine Task Force which was constituted by the Prime Minister's office in the wake of COVID-19 pandemic. So in this regard, according to the principal scientific advisor to the government, he says that the vaccine task force enables DRDO to take decision on testing as well as sample sharing even in case of a foreign collaboration with respect to research or trials conducted on patients because of COVID-19. However, in this regard, the ICMR chief has said that despite these technical process, the guidelines for exchange of human biological material for biomedical research purposes needs to be carried on. That is, these guidelines must be followed and accordingly all information of patients including their data must be available at a central location, that is at the ICMR headquarters. So in this regard, from your examination perspective, you should know about the vaccine task force as well as about these grounds on which Israel as well as India in collaboration wants to conduct trials on Indian patients, especially with respect to audio test, breath test, thermal test, as well as polyamino test. Now, the vaccine task force has been set up by the Prime Minister's office with a focused research to develop vaccines for COVID 19 and accordingly has allowed research institutions as well as laboratories to use patient samples as well as data. And this is allowed for the purpose of research and development of a vaccine. Further, the government had also framed detailed guidelines for sharing of such biospecimens of patients along with their data among institutions as well as laboratories so that they can develop a vaccine against coronavirus. So, with respect to a voice test, it says that the online voice test is based on artificial intelligence, as the test analyzes the recording of a human voice, which aims to identify changes in patient's voice, including deterioration in the condition of their respiratory system. So, this voice test basically intends to identify changes in patient's voice, and accordingly, intends to find out any decline in their respiratory system. Further, with respect to breath analyzer test, it says that this detection is based on terahertz waves, and as a part of research and development programs, officials have developed a system of detecting the virus using these terahertz waves. So this becomes important from our examination perspective. It says that the patient needs to breathe into a sterile sampling kit, after which their sample will be analyzed using artificial intelligence. So here in both voice test as well as breath analyzer test, artificial intelligence will be used. So this again becomes an important point from your prelims perspective. It further talks about an isothermal testing, that is thermal heating test. It says that this is a biochemical testing method which enables the detection of the virus in a saliva sample. And this test detects the presence of virus with help of a chemical reaction which take place once the content is heated at about 60 degrees Celsius. So this is a biochemical testing method which detects the virus with the help of a chemical reaction once the content is heated at around 60 degrees Celsius. And lastly, testing of polyamino acids. Now it says that this is a biochemical method which enables the detection of coronavirus proteins which have been collected in a saliva sample. So this test detects coronavirus proteins through saliva samples. It says that using the appropriate instrumentation, a sample may be analyzed in several minutes. So these are the four kind of tests which India in collaboration with Israel want to carry on Indian patients who are admitted in 4 government hospitals in Delhi. Now this topic primarily becomes important from your prelims perspective and can be covered under current events of national importance as well as under general science, and in your mains gets covered under GS paper 3, especially with respect to science and technology as well as developments and their applications and effects in everyday life, indigenization of technology and developing new technology, as well as awareness in the fields of information technology, computers, robotics, as well as biotechnology. So with this discussion, let's move on to our next news analysis. The next news to be discussed appears on page number 7. It says, one ration card facility in 24 states now. The news highlights that the 3 more states, namely Manipur, Nagaland and Uttarakhand, as well as the Union Territory of Jammu Kashmir, will now offer the One Nation One Ration Card facility as per the Union Food Minister. So this news becomes important primarily from our prelims perspective, and you need to know about the scheme of One Nation One Ration Card, as it is also related to ensuring food security for millions of Indians. So with respect to One Nation One Ration Card, you not only need to know about the scheme but also how it will be implemented throughout the country. So it will be implemented through Integrated Management of Public Distribution System, also referred as IMPDS. So this again becomes an important point from your examination point of view. So this scheme, that is Integrated Management of Public Distribution System, has been envisaged by Department of Food and Public Distribution, which comes under the Ministry of Consumer Affairs, Food and Public Distribution. The purpose of this scheme is to introduce nationwide portability of ration card holders under National Food Security Act of 2013. Now this again becomes an important point to be understood from your examination perspective, that the purpose of One Nation One Ration Card is to ensure food security under the National Food Security Act of 2013. It further helps people to lift their food entitlement or help entitlement of their food grains from any fair price shop across the country without the need for a new ration card. So basically, if a person, say in Kerala, has a ration card, and if he is working in Gujarat, then he can use the same ration card issued by the state government of Kerala in Gujarat to get his or her food entitlement. So the first benefit is that the person who is working in different state need not apply for a new ration card for their food entitlements. So the question is that how this will be done. So it will be done by integrating existing PDS system, that is public distribution systems, as well as portal of states as well as union territories, which will be merged with the central system or portal. So it is in this regard the minister has said that the One Nation One Ration Card scheme gives people freedom of mobility as they are no longer tied down to one single fair price shop. So this again become one of the major benefits of one nation one ration card. The minister has said that by March 31, that is next year, all states would be covered under the scheme. So overall, one nation one ration card will help such migrant workers who have a ration card from a different states but are working in another state. Further, it will also help the central government to pool all the data with respect to public distribution system portals across states and union territories. And it is in this regard that the government has come up with a PDS portal of India. And it is in this regard that the government has come up with a EPDS portal. It says that the portal is intended to be a one-stop information for public distribution system, as the portal aims to bring transparency by disseminating data, information, news, etc. related to public distribution system. Further, it highlights that the portal is also expected to provide vital information on policies which is related to public distribution system, information on central and state government schemes, price of commodities under public distribution system, allocation and offtake details with respect to public distribution system and food grain entitlements, stakeholders information, fair price shop details, ration card information, etc. So the EPDS portal will help the central government to collect all vital information with respect to PDS system. And lastly, it says that apart from a centrally provided data, this portal will also provide links to PDS related websites of various states so that the central government have adequate and real-time information with respect to the public distribution system in India. So these can be said to be some of the benefit of EPDS portal devised by the Ministry of Consumer Affairs, Food and Public Distribution System, specifically under the Department of Food and Public Distribution. Thus, this topic becomes important primarily from our prelims as well as mains perspective, as questions may be asked in your prelims examination as well as in your mains examination with respect to utility and benefits of one nation one ration card system, integrated management of public distribution system, as well as about the EPDS portal system. Thus, from your prelims perspective, this topic gets covered under economic and social development, and from your mains, it gets covered under GS paper 3, especially with respect to public distribution system as well as objectives, functioning, limitations, revamping, and issues of buffer stocks and food security. So, with this, let's move on to our next news analysis. The next news to be discussed appears on page number 9. The news says China and Nepal have treated each others as equal as per the Chinese President Xi Jinping. He says, so this particular news highlights that the President and Premier exchanged greetings with Nepali counterparts on anniversary of bilateral ties. Now this news must be seen from the perspective of India's relation with Nepal, or rather India's declining relation with Nepal in the recent past. So in this regard, let us go through this article but from the perspective of major points which can be said to be working against Indian interest. So first and foremost important aspect mentioned in this news is that China has said that it treats Nepal equally. Now this is one fact which Nepal of late has accused India of, and Nepal has said that India does not consider Nepal as its equal partner. Next, it talks about enhanced political mutual trust between Nepal as well as China, and this has resulted in deepened mutual beneficial cooperation for the two countries. Now, this enhanced political mutual trust as well as deepening of their mutual beneficial cooperation can be seen from the fact that both China and Nepal have signed 18 agreements as well as 2 memorandum of understandings on various infrastructure projects which is supposed to be built on 8-point connectivity and transit trade, which was earlier signed in 2016 between China and Nepal. So again, development of China and Nepal relationship also works against India in this regard. Now here the news highlights that Nepal's letter to the Chinese President Xi Jinping says that Nepal welcomes China's moves to build community with shared future for mankind. And this letter is with respect to the Belt and Road Initiative of China. So as per the letter, Nepal has offered its commitment as well as cooperation, especially with the Belt and Road Initiative projects. Now here we must understand that India has opposed any projects with respect to Belt and Road Initiative of China. Now this Belt and Road projects involving Nepal and China includes tunnels and railway lines from Tibet as well as power projects in Nepal. Now this is also a concern for India, and because of this development, the Prime Minister of India Narendra Modi has said that at times these development projects or these development partnerships results in or becomes dependence partnership. Now here the Prime Minister has highlighted that how because of the Belt and Road Initiative various other small countries have come under debt burden of China. So in this regard, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has rather cautioned Nepal with respect to this debt burdening because of BRI projects. Now, another important aspect which concerns India is with respect to the quadrilateral arrangement between four countries, namely China, Nepal, Afghanistan, as well as Pakistan. Now, this quadrilateral arrangement involving India's neighbors can be seen as a provocative move by China as it involves three SAARC countries, however, without India's involvement. And in this regard, it can be said with respect to this quadrilateral arrangement between China, Nepal, Afghanistan, and Pakistan that China is making concrete strategic moves involving India's neighbors, and thereby China is slowly increasing its footprint in South Asia. And this overall development may hamper India's interest and also impact India's relationship with its neighbors, including Afghanistan as well as Nepal. Now, another aspect with respect to India's concerns is the Trans-Himalayan Multi-Dimensional Connectivity Network, which is planned by Chinese administration, and it involves the expansion of railway, roads, aviation, as well as telecommunication between China and Nepal. So again, the Trans-Himalayan Multi-Dimensional Connectivity Network again becomes a cause of concern for India-Nepal ties. And lastly, the news highlights that Chinese ambassador to Nepal is involved in brokering political settlement between the Prime Minister of Nepal, that is KP Sharma Oli, and his rival factions in the ruling party so that they all come together with China and against India. So in this regard, this article must be seen from the perspective of Nepal's relation with China vis-a-vis Nepal's declining relation with India. Further in this news, you must also understand that how China is slowly making concrete strategic steps which involves India's neighbors, and thereby it is increasing its footprints in South Asia. And this can be said with respect to the new quadrilateral arrangement between the four countries, namely China, Afghanistan, Nepal, as well as Pakistan. So this development must concern India as it involves Nepal as well as Afghanistan, with whom India has shared good relations in the past. Thus, this topic becomes important primarily from the perspective of your international relations subject. Hence, in your prelims, this gets covered under current event of international importance, and your mains gets covered under GS paper 2, especially with respect to India and its neighborhood relations, bilateral, regional, or global groupings and agreements involving India or affecting India's interest, and effects of policies and politics of developed and developing countries on India's interest. Thus, this news becomes important from our examination perspective, especially with respect to steps taken by China involving Nepal as well as Afghanistan and Pakistan with respect to the new quadrilateral arrangement, and also with respect to the Trans-Himalayan Multi-Dimensional Connectivity Network between China and Nepal. So with this, let's move on to our next news analysis. The next news to be discussed also appears on page number 9. It says that Arab world's first nuclear plant achieves criticality. UAE, that is United Arab Emirates, announces launch of Barakah. So this news highlights that United Arab Emirates has started the operation of one of the four reactors at Barakah. Now as you can see in this map, this is Barakah, and its location becomes important with respect to geography, as questions have been asked previously by UPSC with respect to important places as well as their location. So as you can see, this is the location of Barakah and this is United Arab Emirates, and it is very close to Qatar. Now this nuclear plant has been established by Emirates Nuclear Energy Corporation along with South Korea's Korea Electric Power Corporation, and accordingly they have established a subsidiary company named Nava Energy Company. So this Nava Energy Company has started the Unit 1 of Baraka Nuclear Energy Plant. Now, important point with respect to this nuclear energy power plant is that it is a 1400 megawatt pressurized water reactor nuclear plant. And according to IAEA, that is International Atomic Energy Agency, it has said that the plant's Unit 1 at Baraka has achieved its first criticality. Now, this means that Unit 1 of the plant has started generation of controlled fission chain reaction. So this again becomes important to understand with respect to our examination perspective, that what is the meaning of achieving first criticality. Now this development becomes important because it opens up nuclear competition within the Middle East countries. As we already know that earlier Iran had signed a nuclear deal with United States. However, now the United States has withdrawn from that deal. But now, according to IAEA, the Baraka nuclear plant has started operation of its one of the four reactors. So in this regard, the confrontation between different Middle East countries may arise in near future. This is also because Qatar has opposed the nuclear plant and has said that it is a threat to peace as well as environment in the region. So in all these contexts, this development becomes important, and also the fact that India maintains good relationship with these Middle East countries. So in this news analysis, you must know about this nuclear power plant as well as the location of Baraka, and also the fact that Qatar has opposed the operation of the nuclear power plant by United Arab Emirates. Now, important point to be noted here is that Qatar has recently left OPEC, that is Organization for Petrol Exporting Countries. So again, this development also becomes important and significant from your examination perspective. So here what we need to understand that one of the reactor which has become operational at Baraka nuclear power plant in UAE is a 1400 megawatt pressurized water reactor, and according to IAEA, the unit 1 has achieved its first criticality, which means that it has started generation of controlled fission chain reaction. Now, this topic becomes important from the perspective of current events of international importance, world geography with respect to the location of Baraka nuclear plant, as well as general science with respect to criticality of Unit 1 reactor of Baraka nuclear plant. So, with this discussion, let's move on to our next news analysis. The next news to be discussed appears on page number 11. It says, detecting Alzheimer's. Now, this particular news highlights that a new blood test may help to detect Alzheimer's disease even 20 years before the onset of cognitive impairment. Now, here you must understand that Alzheimer is a kind of dementia, and onset of Alzheimer's disease impacts a person's memory, thinking, as well as behavior. So, in this regard, this news mentions that usually Alzheimer's disease is diagnosed by characterization of the amyloid plaques and tau tangles in the brain. However, as per the new study, it highlights that the phospho tau 217 protein found in the tangles could be an accurate indicator living in the. Now, here you need to understand is that Alzheimer's disease is because of certain problems with the nerve cells, and these problems are because of deposition of plaques as well as tangles, also referred as tau. Now, these plaques are basically with respect to deposition of protein fragments, which is called beta amyloid, which builds up in the spaces between the nerve cells. Now, in the nerve cell, there are certain spaces, and in these spaces, the beta amyloid protein gets deposited, also referred as plaques. With respect to tangles or tau, it says that these are twisted fibers of another protein called tau, which builds up inside the nerve cells. So these plaques get deposited within the space of the nerve cells, whereas the tau get deposited within the nerve cell itself. So as you can see in this picture, this is a normal nerve cell as well as this is a nerve cell which is impacted because of Alzheimer's disease. And here as you can see, the amyloid plaques get deposited between the spaces of nerve cells, whereas the tau protein get deposited within the nerve cells itself. So the question is that what are these amyloid plaques? Now it highlights that amyloid is a general term for protein fragments that the body produces normally. and beta amyloid is a protein fragment snipped away from amyloid precursor protein. Now, in a healthy brain, these protein fragments are broken down and eliminated. However, these amyloid plaques are hard insoluble accumulations of beta amyloid proteins that get clustered together or that get clumped together between these nerve cells and is not easily diluted. And this deposition of amyloid plaques between the nerve cells causes Alzheimer's disease in a person. Another question is that what causes beta amyloid plaques? So these beta amyloid molecules are initially found in a very small strands which can dissolve in fluid between the cells, and these fluids then get washed out of the brain. However, this news says that the enzyme which cuts APP into beta amyloid is not very precise and can also result in slightly larger strands that do not dissolve. So basically these amyloid plaques do not dissolve and get deposited in the brain, and it overall impacts the neural activity taking place in their brain. So these beta amyloid plaques are longer strands and are very sticky at the level of individual molecules and start the process of clumping into deposits referred to as plaques. So basically these amyloid plaques get deposited because the brain is not able to dissolve these beta amyloid plaques. And because these beta amyloid plaques are not able to dissolve, hence this get deposited and impacts the neural activity in a person. Now the next question is that what is this neurofibrillary tangles? Now these tangles are insoluble twisted fibers found inside brain cells, and these tangles consist primarily of a protein called, so again these tangles are insoluble twisted fibers called tau, and these tangles are proteins which forms part of a structure called a microtubule. Now another important aspect is microtubule, as microtubule helps transportation of nutrients and other important substances from one part of the nerve cell to another. So these microtubules helps to transport important nutrients and other important substances from one part of the nerve cell to another part of the nerve cell. However, in Alzheimer's disease, the tau protein becomes abnormal and the microtubule structure collapses. And because of the collapse of the structure of microtubule, the transport of nutrients and other important substances from one nerve cell to another stops. And this impacts the cognitive functioning of a human brain. So the next question is that how do these plaques and tangles cause dementia? So the presence of these plaques around a neuron causes them to die, and this may be done possibly by triggering an immune response in the immediate area. Further, the tangles which have been formed inside the neurons interfere with the cellular machinery which is used to create and recycle proteins, which ultimately kills the nerve cells. So this is how these plaques and tangles cause dementia in a human brain. So it is in this aspect this news highlights about phosphor tau 217 protein. So this news highlights that as per a new study, the phosphor tau 217 protein found in the tangles could be an accurate indicator in a living person. So from your examination perspective, you must know about plaques, tangles as well as phosphor tau 217 protein. So if a question appears in the UPSC examination, for example, like phosphor tau 217 protein has been in news recently and it pertains to which of the following? One of the four options will be Alzheimer's disease. So similar questions can be asked in your upcoming examination, especially with respect to Alzheimer's disease as well as plaques, tangles, including phosphor tau 217 protein. So here you need to know that plaques get deposited in the spaces between nerve cells, whereas tau, which is another form of protein, builds up inside the nerve cells. And the collapse of the structure of microtubule prevents the transport of essential nutrients and other important substances from one nerve cell to another. Further, the presence of plaques around a neuron cause them to die, whereas tangles, which are formed inside the nerve cell, interfere with the cellular machinery which is used to create and recycle proteins, and this ultimately kills the nerve cell. Thus, this topic becomes important primarily from your prelims perspective, from the perspective of general science. So, after understanding about Alzheimer's disease, let's move on to our next topic of discussion. The next news to be discussed appears on page number 14. It says 3 states rank high in dhole conservation. These states are Karnataka, Maharashtra, as well as Madhya Pradesh. This news highlights that these three states are well equipped and ranks high with respect to conservation as well as to consolidate the forest habitats and recover dhole's population by increasing prey density and also reducing pressure on forest. Now here you need to understand that dholes are wild dog of Asia, which was once found throughout the continent of Asia, but this species has now been declared as endangered by IUCN. So the main threats to the dhole species includes ongoing habitat loss, depletion of prey base, persecution and possibly disease transfer from domestic and feral dogs. Now, this news also mentioned about three other states, namely Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, as well as Odisha. This news says that these three states needs to improve as well as prey densities in eastern Ghats, as this would strengthen the link between Dhole population in western Ghats as well as central India. So, along with Karnataka, Maharashtra, and Madhya Pradesh, the three states which needs to improve habitat conditions and prey densities for dholes preservation are Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, as well as Orissa, as it will not only help to preserve the conservation of dholes but will also provide a linkage with respect to their expanding population between Western Ghats as well as central India. So dhole has been declared as endangered as per IUCN, and this map also shows where we can find this particular species in Asia, and the area in which this species is found is shrinking slowly. So, in this regard, this news highlights that dholes play an important role as apex predators in forest ecosystem. This is because, besides the tiger, the dhole is the only large carnivore in India. However, it has been categorized as endangered as per the International Union for Conservation of Nature. So, overall, in this regard, this news says that we need targeted management plans with respect to scientific monitoring of dholes in India in districts across the country so that we can conserve the population of this particular species. Now, another important aspect which we must know is that dhole has been provided under Schedule 2 of Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. Now, Section 9 of Wildlife Protection Act provides for prohibition of hunting. It says that no person shall hunt any wild animals specified in Schedules 1, 2, 3, and 4 except as provided under Section 11 and 12, that is, except for purposes of research as well as other conservation purposes of any animals mentioned in any of the schedules of Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. So, in this regard, this aspect becomes important as dhole or wild dog has been provided under Schedule 2 of Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. Now, this topic becomes important primarily from our perspective of environment as well as ecology, and from your prelims point of view, gets covered under general issues on environmental ecology as well as biodiversity. Now, the next news to be discussed appears on page number 11. It says, Arming India's Poor Against Pandemic 2. Now, this particular news highlights about various aspects, especially with respect to nutrition in a children's food. So, this news primarily highlights about a nutritious diet and also mentions about a concept known as hidden hunger. As the article says, as the article highlights that even though children are given food, but at times there is still certain cases of hidden hunger because of lack of important nutrients. So, in this regard, this article says that nutritious experts across India have emphasized that besides vitamin D and calcium supplementation, foods which are rich in micronutrients such as vitamin B complex, calcium, iron, zinc, iodine, selenium, as well as zinc can be offered so that immunity against any infection is also ensured. So, this article says that if these micronutrients are also added to the nutritious diet of a child, then it will take care of what is referred as hidden hunger in poorly nourished people. So, the article says that the meals offered in Anganwadis as well as in other states should have the kind of menu which offers the best combination of vegetable components in the meal, including these important micronutrients. So, in this aspect, this article highlights that many nutritionists have suggested that besides dal or sambar, which uses pulses, such meals should also include green vegetables like spinach and other green leafy vegetables, beans, peas, carrots, tomato, potato, milk or curd, as well as fruits like bananas, as well as omega 3 and 6 fatty acids which are in the egg. So, this article says that if these nutrients are covered in a diet, then it will provide a wholesome nutrition to the children as well as adults. Now, this aspect applies for both vegetarian as well as non vegetarian food. However, the question arises is with respect to affordability of these nutritious food, especially for children belonging to the lower strata of the society. Now, in this regard, the article has mentioned about Food and Agricultural Organization's report on State of Food Security and Nutrition in the World 2020, which we have discussed in our last news discussion. It highlights that as per the report, a nutrient adequate meal cost around rupees 25 per meal, and similarly it will cost rupees 50 for 2 meals per day. However, a healthy diet will cost around rupees 100 per day. Now this becomes slightly difficult for certain section of the population to have a healthy diet which might cost around rupees 100 per day. So in this regard, this article highlights that for over 370 million poor people of India, this is a big amount to spend on a daily basis, and hence they cannot afford a healthy diet which cost rupees 100 or more per day. So the article says that beside efforts from the central and state governments, there is a need for substantial contribution from private institutions, including Indian and international institutions, as well as fundings from CSR, that is corporate social responsibility from large industries and conglomerates, and also individual donors should also contribute so that poor children in India can have nutritious food. And with these contributions, it is quite likely that we may reach this target of rupees 100 per day's meals, which can be said to be a healthy diet. Now, with respect to healthy diet, in the last paragraph, this article mentions about nutrition from seaweed. Now, you must know that seaweed also contains small amounts of vitamin A, C, E, and K, along with folate, zinc, sodium, calcium, and magnesium. Further, the protein present in some seaweeds, such as spirulina, contain all of the essential amino acids and antioxidants. Further, seaweeds are vegetarian and rich in vitamins, minerals, iodine, as well as omega 3 fatty acids. So, we see that seaweeds are very rich with respect to nutrients. So, if seaweed is included in the diet of children as well as adults, it will provide the adequate nutrition which is necessary in any healthy diet. Now, in this regard, you must know about spirulina, which is an organism which grows in both fresh and salt water and is a type of cyanobacteria, which is a family of single celled microbes. And these are often referred to as blue green algae. Now, just like plants, these cyanobacteria can also produce energy from sunlight through the process of photosynthesis. Further, seaweeds are also nutritious additions to everyday meals, and accordingly, the article says that Indians should also add seaweed in our daily meals, as it has also been done by other countries such as Japan, Korea, China, and most of the southeastern countries. So, this article says that the government should seriously think of including seaweed in our daily diets to improve our overall nutrition. So the question is, how do we grow these seaweeds? So in this regard, the article says that India has a coastline of more than 7,500 kilometers. So according to the author, we can easily grow and process seaweed for human consumption, as seaweed can also be included in midday meal programs run by school to enhance nutritious diets of children. Now in this regard, this article mentions about a paper which is published by Central Salt and Marine Chemicals Research Institute. It says that the institute has published the paper Assessment of Nutritive, Biochemical, Antioxidant and Antibacterial Potential of 8 tropical macroalgae along the Kutch coast of India as a human food supplement. And it has been published in the Journal of Aquatic Food Product Technology. So the point which the article conveys is that the government needs to look into the aspect of seaweed, as it provides adequate nutrition not only with respect to vitamins, but also it provides important amino acids, antioxidants, minerals, iodine, as well as omega 3 fatty acids. Thus, seaweed has important nutritious aspect. Thus, this topic becomes important primarily from your mains perspective as well as from your prelims point of view. From your mains, it gets covered under GS paper 2, especially with respect to government policies and interventions for development in various sectors, welfare schemes for the vulnerable section of the population, as well as issues relating to development and management of social sector and services, including health, and also issues relating to poverty and hunger. And in your prelims examination, this topic gets covered under economic and social development, as well as social sector initiatives. The next news to be discussed is with respect to credit guarantee scheme appearing on page number 1. The news says that credit guarantee extended to larger firms as well as to self-employed. Scheme with rupees 41,600 crore corpus was to help the MSMEs. Now this news highlights that the center has expanded its credit guarantee scheme for micro, small and medium enterprises. So earlier the credit guarantee scheme was for MSMEs. Now this scheme has been extended or enlarged to cover loans given to larger firms as well as self-employed people as well as professionals who have taken loans for business purposes, and this has been announced by the Finance Minister of India. Now this topic of credit guarantee scheme has already been discussed in detail on the DNS dated 1st July 2020. So what you can do is to go through the DNS of 1st July 2020 to understand about the emergency credit line guarantee scheme, which was extended earlier only to the MSME sector. So the news which appeared on 1st July was banks sanction rupees 1 lakh crore loans to 30 lakh MSMEs. Now in this particular discussion we discussed about why was this emergency credit line guarantee scheme formulated. We discussed as to how this scheme will help the MSME sector as well as the salient features of this scheme. So one of the main feature of this scheme was that the tenor of loan under this scheme shall be 4 years with moratorium period of 1 year on the principal amount, that is interest shall not be charged for the first year. Further, it says that no guarantee fee shall be charged and interest rates under the scheme shall be capped at 9.25% for banks, financial institutions and 14% for the NBFCs. So this particular news says that this particular credit guarantee scheme has been extended to larger firms, self-employed people as well as professionals who have taken loans for business purposes. So to understand this particular scheme in detail, you can go through the DNS of 1st July 2020. And this topic from your prelims perspective gets covered under economic and social development. Now after our discussion, this becomes your practice question for the day. The question is, seaweed contains which of the following? Options are, first, amino acids, second, vitamin A, third, zinc, sodium, calcium and magnesium, and fourth, antioxidants. The question is, select the correct answer using the code given below. Options are A, 2, 3 and 4 only, B, 1 and 3 only, C, 2 and 4 only, and D, 1, 2, 3 and 4. Now coming to the answer of yesterday, the question was, consider the following statements. The 8 core industries constitute almost 50% of the total index of industrial production. No, this statement is incorrect as it constitutes around 40.27%. Second, this index is prepared by NSO. No, this is also incorrect, as it is prepared by Office of Economic Advisor under Ministry of Commerce and Industry and it is published monthly with a base year of 2011-12. So the question was, which of the statements given above are correct? So the correct answer is D, that is none of the above. So with this we come to an end to today's discussion. Thank you.